Why, hello. Lauren, do your best introduction in radio voice.
Radio voice?
Yeah, go,
I
pretend.
don't feel like I have a good radio voice. I'm a
Oh.
little self-conscious. Hello, I'm Lauren Oak, resident doula, postpartum doula.
What do you want, NPR?
Yeah.
No, do something better. Do like the Friday afternoon show.
Do, 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 do. Hello, I'm Lauren Oak.
That's better.
Welcome to the Twiniversity podcast.
That's better. See, that's
I
it. I always
like
think
NPR.
of
We should do a little NPR.
we should. We have good microphones to do it.
Yeah.
It's what do they call that when people eat and listen to it? Oh, Lauren.
No.
What is that called?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Lauren, when people like
Oh, that.
What is that called?
I don't know. My kids know about that. It's like, it has like an acronym.
Hold on. ASMR.
Yes.
Okay.
Like that. Yes.
It was slipping my brains. So yes, we'll do an NPR. Maybe next episode we'll do an NPR. Okay, we'll do NPR the whole time.
Yes.
Okay, because then they'll get ready for that. All right, good. So stay tuned because that's going to be the next episode that's coming out either in a week or 75 years. We have no control over how these are done. We have a plan, but they go off the rails so often. Lauren, how's life treating you?
It's good. It's not the worst right now.
I'd like to talk about a special adventure that I sent you on recently.
You did?
To get one Peppa Pig balloon.
Peppa Pig. It turned into 5 Peppa Pig balloons.
Well, you literally got suckered at Party City to buy that.
That is all they had.
You're full of crap. You just had to tell them you just wanted the Peppa Pig balloon.
No,
now I had to spend more money.
It was in a package. Yes. They had. I walked in. I said, I need a Peppa Pig balloon, and they said down that aisle to the left. And I went down there, and they either had a $26 bigger Peppa Pig, like the size of me.
For the record, why did you not tell me that was an option?
Because I was like, I'm not getting that one.
Lauren, I'm paying for whatever. I even gave you a tip.
It's okay. Then for $22, I got a Peppa Pig half the size of me and 4 other balloons.
Fine. So Lauren's daughter, my favorite of all the children besides the dog, is homesick, and she had this Peppa Pig balloon that was in her room, and every time that I would speak to her, Peppa would slowly deflate.
Yeah,
and it would
she's now on the floor flat. That original
she's just got to go. But it was depressing because it was like she just kept getting lower and lower, and it was so cute when she first got her, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. So I was like, Peppa Pig's got to come back to life.
So
and that's
now we have the alive Peppa Pig and the dead Peppa Pig together.
We're gonna get the big one next time. Once this Peppa Pig goes, that's it.
It's gonna be a never-ending cycle of Peppa Pigs. And you'd think Emily was like 4.
True.
She's 17.
It doesn't matter. You know what? Balloons always equal celebration.
Yes.
Don't you feel like when you were decorating for the kids' parties, did you buy balloons or just inflate them and stick to them to the walls with tape?
I went to the Dollar Tree and got some. I always got balloons there.
But did you put helium in them?
Yeah. I'd get.
Where'd you get helium? Where'd you get helium?
Like I would go to the Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree has helium balloons.
They do?
What planet do you live on? Yes.
New York City?
Yeah. Well,
we don't have a Dollar Tree.
Okay. Come to the suburbs and I will introduce you to the Dollar Tree. $1.20. Well, it's $1.25 now.
What? $1.25 tree?
Yeah, it's $1.25 now.
It's
ridiculous. Still called Dollar Tree, but everything's $1.25. But for $1.25, you can get a helium balloon.
One
of the Mylar ones. Yeah.
What if I want just like the colored ones? Like, could I buy the pack of colored and then they inflate them?
I don't know. Maybe
I have to find that out. We never had balloons that were inflated, like forever parties. Like we'd always just blow them up and then stick them to the wall. Are you ready
for something? Rub them on your head and put them on the wall.
Are you ready for today's story about a balloon? Totally not planned on discussing this, but it's funny. I pray to God my mother doesn't listen to this. So my parents went on a cruise when I was, let's say I was 16 and my sister was 19. And it was the first time we were left alone. And they went on a cruise for Halloween.
Oh.
So you know my sissy. there's going to
Party.
be a big house party. Now,
Yes.
for those of you who don't know me personally, which probably you feel like you do, and by the way, you do, and when we meet in person and you're like, I feel like I know you, you do
Yes.
know me. There's
Yes.
the only one version of me. This is all you get.
That's it.
But my sister is horrible. She's a horrible person. And she is very irresponsible, and she's the older child and would throw these parties when my parents would go away. But weirdly, we live in a family building.
Yeah.
So, like, how did we have a house party where, like, my grandmother, aunts, and uncles were upstairs? But yet somehow we did. And
I
so
think things were different when we were in like the 80s.
it was
Or
reckless. It was
it was
90s, I think.
Dan
Yeah, it
had
was
a
90s by
Dan
then.
had a keg party in his basement while his parents were on upstairs,
Horrible. They'd
and
be
they
in
didn't
jail
know.
now. That's it. They
Like,
didn't
he
know.
had like
That's what I'm saying.
like they were just like, "Huh, you had a keg in our
No,
basement?"
my kids get
Like,
away with nothing. Although
no,
they
nothing. My
probably,
kids,
but
no.
how do we know? They could have had 15 parties just like our families didn't know. We really don't know. I think
Dan
we
would
would
want to
know.
be in the party if they were having a
Yes,
party.
he
If
would.
he has, if one of my kids has a friend over, he wants to be finding out talking to them and finding out what they're doing. And I'm
Me
like,
too.
leave them alone.
Me too. My friends get like their friends come over and I'm like, so what are your plans for your life?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like,
they're
let's
like,
sit and talk. Leave
Ma.
us alone.
And I'm like, no, I want to know. I want to know what these plans are.
Yes.
So they went on this adventure, right? So my parents are gone and we're in the house and we bought a package of balloons because we were like, had nothing. We had no money. So we bought like one package of balloons. I think that there was like 12 balloons.
Uh-huh.
And so we blew them up and we stuck them around the house.
That was
Now,
the big
weirdly,
party.
this was the big party. That's all we had. But it worked out fine. And I do remember the party and it was great. And there was seven, I don't even know how many people there were. Honestly, you know how big my house is. I'm going to say
Hmm.
there was probably 30, which is tight
Yeah,
because
that's a
it's a
lot of people.
small apartment. So we had these people over, great party. Everybody ended up sleeping over. Just you slept where you
Yep.
fell. We
Yep.
got up the next day. Everything was great. So I go to take down the decorations because I am the responsible one. And
Okay.
I'm trying to get some semblance of normalcy back in this apartment out of fear that my parents are going to come home and kill us. So my sister or I don't remember who it was sincerely. If I would, I would take the credit if I thought it was me, but somebody put one of the balloons on a painting.
Uh-oh.
And so when I removed the balloon,
It
it
ruined the painting.
removed, yes.
Oh.
And
Oh.
so I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? They're going to kill me. And I don't actually think my mom knows about this. My father has passed away. And so he's now hearing it in the spirit land. He would have been
Saying, I
fine with it.
knew it. I knew it.
Yes. But this painting wasn't just any painting. It was something that I am pretty sure my parents found in the street
Okay, that sounds something like my parents would do.
when like they first got married.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it was an old man painting that looked like the old man in the sea. Like, let's say, like that
Yep.
old guy.
Yep.
And his name was, this is totally not true. His name was Giovanni Gacciabaldi. Okay. So now, as a child, I really was not aware that this was a fake painting. I had been under the
You
impression,
thought it was like real art.
yeah, or like a family member.
Yeah,
Like, is
like,
this
yeah.
like, are we like
Yeah.
Kennedys now, or like
Yeah.
we're royalty
Your
that we're getting
great
this?
uncle.
Yes. So it was on Giovanni Garibaldi's head, and so when I pulled it off, all the oil painting, like the
Came
oil came
off.
off.
Oh,
So now
you're
we had to
freaking.
basically, oh my God, Lauren. Woo! And by the way, my parents never hit us. I don't know why.
Yeah.
My sister deserved it a lot more than I did, but they didn't. So, like, what are we really afraid of? But whatever. There was always the fear. My
Yeah.
mom's a very tiny Italian woman that would like hit us with a shoe. Like, that's how I was raised, or a
Throw a shoe
spoon.
at-
Yeah, she would hit you with your shoe. So I took a pencil and I basically like sketched in his head. How long do you think it took?
Before they noticed?
Yes.
3 years.
It was over 15.
Oh. They're like, what happened?
Yes. And so I did such a good job with my replacement of his hair that they never noticed. But I will tell you what is insane, and you could ask my sister about this too. They were as mad 15 years later as if it just happened yesterday.
Does your mom still have this picture?
She doesn't, and I don't know where it is. And now I'm even more mad. I could definitely find it because it like hung up in our apartment forever.
Okay.
And it was like in the center of the apartment. Like it was like the piece de resistance of our whole thing.
That's your family's artwork.
Oh my gosh. So totally unrelated.
That's great.
Giovanni Gacciabaldi, haven't thought about him, and there's no relation whatsoever. And weirdly, I will tell you that that's kind of it's not necessarily what today's topic is about, but it kind of goes along with it, because today we're speaking to a mama that is on the other side of the pond, as they and we say.
The UK?
Yes. So her name is Jaymisha, and she has sweet little twinnies, of course. And what she really wants to just kind of say, like if you're in the thick of it, right, no matter what it is that everything has a phase.
Yep, it's true.
And so for our phase, it was secret house parties and lying to our parents.
Yep.
I never lied. I still weirdly feel guilty at like 50 years is right around the corner. Not that close, but not that far. But I feel bad. I'm going to apologize to my mom as soon as we finish today. Because I felt so bad. But I remember like finding different pencils that were like, I have to like draw the hairs in. But yeah, but today it's really about like everything has a phase. And so your twinnies go through a phase, you go through phases. Yep. And what's been like one of the big phases of your twinnies that you're like, I never want to relive that?
The temper tantrum phase. Although I feel like sometimes we still have temper tantrums. They're just different. They're not little, they're kids they're teenagers who slam doors, which drives me crazy. The slamming of the doors. Oh,
yes.
The best is now, because they know I hate it so much, that if like there's a window open and it makes the door slam, then they immediately like, I didn't do it, I swear, because they know it makes me crazy.
But you don't hit them with the shoe, do you?
No, it's shoe.
I'm going to hit them with a shoe when I come over.
Please,
I feel like they need to. It's got to be like a flip flop or like a sandal.
Yes,
it's got to be like a
flip flops,
a floppy shoe. It can't be like a boot. Like that's not a hitting shoe.
No.
There has to be like a specific hitting type of shoe. Yeah, house shoe. 100%.
Like a pair of Toms.
Yes, pair of Toms. What Toms do, Toms may do. Yeah, you have your Crocs. Your Crocs definitely won't do that. Won't cause anything. A good flip flop. Like an Old Navy flip flop.
I have a lot of those. I have a whole container of them, random flip flops. So
and now on the next episode of Beating Your Children with Shoes with Nat and Lauren,
deal with Child Protective Services.
Yeah, here's how to find a good lawyer. That's gonna be the next episode.
I used to work for CPS.
Horrible.
I was a caseworker for years.
I will tell you though, honestly, in defense of my mom, if ever we were hit with a shoe or spoon, it was well deserved.
Yeah, my parents didn't hit us. They probably should have hit my brother often.
Oh yeah, 100%. Even I could vouch for that. Definitely. My favorite hitting of the shoe was when my sister set our kitchen on fire.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because she was on the phone with her boyfriend. And so she put the dish towel close to the whatever she was making for dinner. Yes, I caught it. Saved the day, of course. What else is new? Come on, I'm the favorite child of all time. So yeah, that was my favorite shoe hit of Vivian Trixie. Totally. Okay, so are we ready to listen to Jaymisha talking about phases with her twinnies?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. We don't condone you hit your children with anything, anytime. But you know what? We also are not responsible for what happens in your house. That's all we just want to say.
Yes.
All right, guys. You're going to love Jaymisha. It's such a wonderful conversation. And I hope to be friends with Jaymisha for a long time because we really did have a lot of fun. All right. Not as much fun as I have with Lauren because I don't want her to get mad at me and hate Jaymisha. So knowing that, are you ready to meet Jaymisha?
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Here she is. Oh, Jaymisha, welcome to our very exciting and yet boring and wonderful podcast. I'm so happy you're here today. Thank you. And you're joining us. I love to play this game. You're on the other side of the pond, which we enjoy that. So we have the mom versus mom and pram versus stroller. And that's pretty much where it ends. when it comes to raising twins. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Jaymisha, when you were doing your homework on, like, during the time that you were pregnant, were you finding a lot of European websites, or you were finding a lot of stuff in the US, or where do you think like the base of your information was coming from?
It was a lot of Googling and doing my own research, and actually just finding things. Twiniversity actually is one of those, the go-to of the pre-pregnancy, before you get pregnant, and the tips and so on I got from there. And just in terms of other parental sites where they've got the mums talking, Mumsnet and so on, like talking about things, and also friends.
Oh, thank goodness. You know, it was
people that have gone through things.
It's so great that regardless of where you are in the universe, that we're living the same story, right? And so that's basically what your story is the same as mine, no matter where we are. And I always joke that if I'm in Tribeca in Lower Manhattan or in Thailand, we have the same exact experience. It just may be the stuff in our house and the words that we use that are a little bit different, but it really is. We're living the same thing. And so that's kind of, you know, what I love that what we're talking about today is how everything is a phase. And so guys, for those of you that are out there in the universe, when I have these podcasts, I always know that we kind of have a direction of where we want to go. But I love that since I am always, or I shouldn't say always, I'm 99.9% speaking to twin families, sometimes it goes off the rails. And so just before we press record, I was talking to Jaymisha, and I'm like, well, what do we want to talk about today, right? Because you're like a fancy pantsy author, and you have like, there's so many things that we could talk about.
Never
with
been
your girlies.
That before, but yes,
well,
I'll take
put that in your bio, fancy author. Yes. And then, you know, but Natalie at Twiniversity, so totally. We got that. So she has this great book that's out there, but I know that there's so much more to the twin parenting story than just a book. And I'm not just saying that the book is just a book, but what we're doing here is you're going to see why Jaymisha is the type of parent that would write a book, right? So besides you being a twin mom, you're an unbelievable educator. I love that you live in a multi-generational house and everybody is all together. And one of the things that you said to me right before was that I always tell new parents that everything is just a phase. And it's so hard to really think about that, because in the very beginning, when they're crying so much or not sleeping, or, you know, before potty training and before they're holding their bottle, that everything is so difficult for the people that are in that current phase to kind of see beyond. So Jaymisha, tell us a little bit about kind of your twin parenting experience so far, your 2 years of crazy insanity with your
roller
little girlies.
coaster ride. So do you know what it was? So they were born during COVID time, in the pandemic. So they were literally, we were restricted in terms of what we can do and so on. They were in the house the whole time, where we could go and what we could do. And as they went, but first of all, it was a shock in terms of twins in the house, first time parent. Whoa. And living with everybody, and in terms of, so I've got extended family, and we all live together. So I've got my in-laws, I've got my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their children as well. So it's quite overwhelming. So first-time parent, just come in from hospital with hormones flying all over the place. Got babies. Don't know what we're doing. We just got to go with, there's no manual. And we're like, right. So we're just kind of thrown into the deep end, just do this. So we just figured things out. And as we went along, it was listening to, obviously everybody's got opinions and so on, and trying to deal with that, as well as trying to do what you think. You've got a picture in your mind as to how you want to be and what things you want to do, and trying to be able to do that. So as days went on, we trialed it and do things that we like and don't like, and things were working and so on. And there were phases in terms of when as the children were developing in the developmental phases, there would be like, what's going on here? And we'd be literally just pulling out our hair going, like, I can't do this. What's going on? And one of the examples that I gave you was actually feeding the children. But she came to a point where she's sitting there, I've got my twins, trying to feed them, and she's just going through a screaming phase, literally just screams for no reason. And the first thing I thought of, there's no way I can take her out, because if we go to a restaurant and that happens, what do I do? And I was like, is this going to be forever? And then we thought of different strategies and so on. We'd try things and nothing seemed to be working. And then it was talking to people, and it's like, okay, yes, this has happened before. And yes, my child went through this and so on. Kind of makes you feel okay. It's like, you're not the only one, and my child's just normal. and then I realized that actually it's a phase. It's just past. And then there are other things like, for example, a hitting phase that they've gone through. And it's like they scream and they hit and they're defiant. And it's like, whoa, is this what's going to happen forever? And is this the way it's going to be? And before you know it, it's a phase, it's past, and they've stopped doing it. And I think that was my mantra that's got us through so far, up until now, of everything that's happening, whether it's an eating habit, whether it's a feeding habit, whether it's behavior, in terms of what they're saying, how they're doing, even sleeping.
Yes.
Like everything is temporary. Everything's a phase. Things are changing and evolving all the time, even with things that we're doing. So if there's a manic moment, it's at that moment, it will change, you know? So I said and the funny thing is I got pregnant, and then a month later, would you know it, my friend got pregnant with twins.
Good.
And she was like, okay, I need your help. What are you doing? In fact, it was 6 months, sorry. And it was to keep her going, my advice was, everything's a phase. Just treat it as everything's a phase. And do you know what? It's worked for me.
It is such a great way to live. If you realize that everything is temporary, it's so much more manageable.
Absolutely.
Because the minute that you start thinking, I keep thinking back to like those very early sleepless nights, and everybody freaks out, right? They're like, I can't do this anymore. And I really tried to remind people, especially like when you've just had babies, that babies are supposed to wake up a lot because their bellies are the size of a pea. And you can't fill a lot in there. And so they're going to be hungry again in 15 minutes, right? So that's why they're getting up so often. But then as they get bigger, their little bellies get bigger, they could hold more milk, they could hold more formula, breast milk, whatever. And then they could sleep a little bit longer. But until for that transitionary time where you're going from basically like a pea to a ping pong ball and stomach size, it could be torture for some people, especially if you had like a C-section or if you had a traumatic delivery. It's so much more magnified. So when you were like thinking back to like that very, very early phase, what were some of those phases that maybe lasted a little longer than you thought that they would, but then eventually did end?
I think one of them, so initially, them waking up and our sleep routine, we didn't have it. Everyone must be right, I'm going to put them on routine. But if it doesn't work and they're waking up, then you've just got to deal with it. And it's easier said than done. The first night we were up. Me and my husband, had one child each. We're looking at each other going, is this it forever? And it was tough. It was tough. And then day 2 got a little bit better. And but it wasn't always like that. And it was just in terms of the sleeping and the waking up and managing both, because I was feeding, so there's not so much for me. Like I wanted them on me. So in terms of my husband helping, there wasn't much he could do apart from the nappy changes and so on. The feeding was me, and I actually did it at the same time.
Wow,
so I didn't do one after the other. Just in my head, I just felt it was easier. And in terms of that, I found it very difficult. That was a longer phase in terms of me getting used to it. And in terms of as they were growing and the demand for milk was even more. And it was getting harder. And it was like, okay, it's not working now in terms of having 2 big babies on me. And then I had to do let's take turns. So did one baby first and then the other baby. And figuring out something like that, it just felt like I'm going on a repeat cycle because nothing's working right now. So that took a long time in terms of, right, I'm not getting this. And in terms of after a little while, they began to hurt. And I was in pain and I was crying, and it's like, this is not working. And they were losing weight, and that whole time just seemed like eternity. Like, is this it? And in my mind, it was like, I'm definitely gonna give it at least 6 months. This is what I want.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I had loads of people say to me, no, if it doesn't work, you're not a failure. And it's not a personal thing. You can go on formula, which is fine. But my personal journey and what I wanted was, I want to have my own milk and feed them my breast milk. And I fought that. I did it, and it worked. And it took a long time. And that was one of the hardest phases, that feeding period, in terms of for me. But persevere, And eventually you find that actually, oh, I've got a routine built up and it works.
It's, it's great that you bring that up about the perseverance, because some phases could be much longer, right? Yeah. Especially that. Now, Jaymisha and I were talking before we started recording, and we were talking about breastfeeding. And she was telling me that when she was in the hospital, so I had just come from a client just now that was kind of unexpected this morning, and Jaymisha was so great to reschedule. But I was very frustrated when we started our conversation today, because I am just infuriated about how hospitals are dealing with our moms currently. And so there was a glimmer of hope for me that I wanted Jaymisha to say, like, oh, in London, we're doing things better. That's really what I kind of wanted. I wanted to know that somebody was winning. And when you and Jaymisha told me that, when the babies weren't gaining weight because she was breastfeeding, that the doctors and the nurses actually recommended that you move to formula. But instead of doing that, you kind of persevered. So I want to talk about that, because that is a phase 2, right? Because you could opt to make that be the next phase. Had you, just said, I'm blindly going to follow the doctors, I'm not going to listen to my instincts, I'm not going to do kind of what, my gut is telling me to do. How did you have the strength to know that that phase wasn't over and that you should persevere and continue with what you wanted?
I went a bit, if you want to call it psychotic. If you want to call it that, I actually bought scales myself.
Okay, good.
I bought scales myself, and I was like, do you know what? Let me see. And so then when I was feeding them and so on, every so often, I would weigh them myself, because they would come every 2 weeks. So I was like, in 2 weeks' time, I don't want to hear again to say, actually, they've lost weight, which this is what happened. 2 weeks later, they were like, okay. And then it's like, cause of concern now, like, your children are not gaining weight now, you have to go into formula. And then they'll put another plan in place, and I wanted to be in control of that. I wanted to make that decision, and yes, I get it. If that's the case, and it's for the well-being of the children, of my children, then I have to listen. But at that moment in time, when I could see milk and they are drinking, and I could see it's not a drastic gain, but they are gaining weight, it was good enough for me at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So I bought the scales and we weighed them, and I see that was actually happening in terms of, okay, they are gaining weight. Let's carry on. And before you know it, the nurses were like, yep, that's fine. They've gained their birth weight, and you can carry on the way you're going, because obviously something's working.
Yeah. So people don't really realize that a baby could lose up to 10% of its birth weight. And if you don't know that kind of going in, it could be very alarming. And I don't know. I know that hospitals are so short-staffed, and, I know that this is an international issue, but I always want people to realize that it is just a phase, and you can persevere, and that a phase doesn't have to be over, right? Because technically you could have said, okay, well, this phase of my breastfeeding journey is over and I'm just going to do this. But I loved how you did that. What, besides you being psychotic, which I love, and I think I actually fully support it. And if there's a way that you feel comfortable getting done what you want to get done, that's the way to do it. Right. I always say this.
I use a collector. I used a milk collector to see if there is any milk and so on. And it actually worked in terms of it's not dry. There is milk, and I know they're getting it because they're having it. I'm feeding them. They're having that milk. So to say that, because that's what one of the nurses said, actually, maybe you don't have any. So I was like,
Jaymisha,
I'm
telling you, we need to literally charter a plane and then just go to household and help people with this.
My
and
friend did that at the same time. We had babies at the same time, and she gave up because she was like, it's not happening for me. Yeah. It's not. We talked about breastfeeding, and we talked about the milk and so on. It'd be great if we could give our own. And she was one of those where I feel I can't do it and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think any parent should feel,
especially if they've had anxiety before. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people wouldn't do that, but I love that you're like, okay, let's see if we could get through this as a phase. Now, I know that's always usually a big one, is that first kind of feeding, sleepless nights. Yes. And then the next phase is typically kind of like that teething situation, where even if you were on a schedule and even if everybody was eating okay, things go a little bit haywire and their poop gets wacky from all the saliva that they're producing with their teeth. How did you, when that phase hit, did you know, like, did you recognize that you're at the beginning of a new phase, or did you not realize it until you were kind of knee deep in it?
I think I had my sister-in-law in the house as well with me, who had 2 children of her own. So in terms of things that I might not spot, so she would be like, oh, perhaps they're teething, which you don't even think about.
Yes.
So having somebody else and being open to somebody else saying, oh, perhaps this is the case, and then doing your own research on it and saying, okay, these are the symptoms and this could be the case, then you make that decision and be like, oh, okay, maybe it is teething that they're going through, and then having to deal with that phase.
Now I want to know how your role in education played with you coming to terms with the phases. Right? Because you don't have a typical background. You are an educator by trade, and you are your skill level far exceeds that of a typical new parent. Did that play a role, or maybe it didn't, when it came to your actual kids? Right? Because sometimes you talk to people that are like, this is what I do, but when it comes to my own life, everything goes out the window. As an educator, were you able to say, okay, this is very typical of this age and stage. I know that this is what's going to happen next. Do you think that you having that kind of educational knowledge helped you get through the phases?
I think that's what it was. I think that is it. And I did a lot of reading and research. And in terms of child development, in knowing things that I know in terms of how children grow and develop, definitely helped. And being patient. Obviously, we're still humans at the end of it, whether you're an educator or not, you're still a human being that goes through, in fact, breakdowns and meltdowns and so on. And you understand these things and you can have those moments. I did have those moments, whether you're an educator or not, you're still a human being that has feelings, you know, and you see these phases. And actually, you might even be used to those phases, seeing it in school. Like at the moment, my children are still little, but if you see a tantrum that happens or you talk about teething, you see things, but you're not as phased as easily. Okay, I think you built a little bit different in terms of that. But there are times where you melt, but you can walk away and then reset and come back in, and everything's okay. And yes, I do think that in terms of being an educator, knowing a few things and reading and doing my research on things, that's what I used to do in terms of teaching and planning. You do your research before you deliver. It really did help. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're not as phased as you would be.
Now, do you think that, or like, how do you feel about the phases in general, right? Because we know that as new parents, we have these phases like we're discussing. But do you think about the phases of your life previous to children? And did you apply that same philosophy of it's just a phase to that time? Or do you think that it was something that like motherhood brought out that said, like, this is going to be my coping mechanism, is that it's just a phase? Or have you always kind of done that? You know, when you were in school yourself and getting your own education and you had a rough test, have you always been somebody to apply like the it's just a phase kind of air quotes around that, you know, philosophy of life?
If I'm honest, I think it's motherhood that's done it for me. And you have your certain ways, but I think in terms of dealing with 2 children at the same time, twins, and trying to stay composed and not being phased, I guess, by certain things, it has to come. It came for me, came when I had the twins, and having to deal with certain things, because if they're both crying at the same time or they're both needy, in my mind, something just clicked to say, do you know what? Everything's going to be okay. Everything is temporary. And I had to, for my own sanity and to stay sane, I guess, that's what was my mantra. And I just had it of, this is what I'm going to say throughout, and told my friends, everything's a phase. Just say that and we'll be okay. You have a bad day. It's temporary. It's going to change. You'll have a better day tomorrow.
It's really true that sunrise plays such an important role for so many twin families, because it's your opportunity to do it again, right? No matter what happened the day before, I always remember 5:30. I remember being up at like 5:30 in the morning. And, you know, here in New York City, like I live on a very, very, very busy street.
Yeah.
And so there is always people outside of my window, and it's a very commercial area. And there, there's restaurants, people singing happy birthday, there's tour groups, there's everything. And I remember that like I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and it would be like silent. And it was bizarre because you never hear New York City like that. You could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And there was a moment that I would be up and I would be feeding the Twinnies. And I remember like I was really in, kind of the locomotion era. Like I had it down, like I had my whole system down. And even though we were up at 5:30, I remember that like sleep professionals would be like, that's not an awake time. That's still the middle of the night. And I'm like, well, what is that? And I think about like the newscasters that were on that time of day were very off the rails. They would like put their feet up on the desk. They would have like random conversations about like their favorite foods, where it wasn't so like political or worldwide terror or whatever. It was a fun time of the morning. And I think about that phase. And although I was sad that I was up that early and I was tired and whatever, in hindsight, I think that looking back at that phase, it was actually very cherished. So like when you're talking about that it's just a phase, you could use it in both ways, right?
Absolutely.
So if you could use it as like everything's a phase, you're going to get through it. But then at the same time, we could also look at it like it's just a phase. Let's cherish it and let's acknowledge it. What types of moments did you have with your Twinnies that you really like you pressed the pause button and you were like, I really just want to drink this in, despite the fact that it looked like you were in the middle of a tornado, that you were just like, let me just stop here?
I think there's been a few. I think one of them was in terms of if one's needy for me and screaming for me, and the other one is as well. The fact that we had a network of people. There's one, maybe perhaps there's one more attached to dad, and there's one that's attached to mom. And the one that who would want dad more would want me at that moment in time, even if the other one other child is crying. It'd be like, right, make time at this moment in time. You deal with that child. I want to cherish that moment of this child wants me, and because in terms of sometimes it's just so hard to give both of them the same attention and the needs. And when they were little, when they were first born, my second twin too, Dulcie was also jaundice. She had jaundice.
Okay.
So I had to spend more time with her. And then I just felt a little bit of a guilt in terms of, because she was in hospital, so we had to spend a lot of time with her. And then it was the other twin that actually is like, oh, even though perhaps she didn't even know it, but I feel she did. It's like, those hugs and the needs, and when she's crying, like I wasn't the one. So when she did cry, it's like, oh, do you know what? You come to me and cherish those hugs and just sit with her for that much longer. Even if she gets used to it and it's like, that's it. She just wants to be picked up all that. That's fine for now. I want to change it. I'm not going to pick her up when she's 15. Who knows? Maybe I will. At that moment.
I hope you do. I have to say, I still want my mommy on plenty of days. So it's, I don't think, I really just want people to realize too, that although everything is just a phase, it does end, right? Like the badness and the weirdness and the uncertainty and the insecurity, like that does end. But you still are going to have those moments where you kind of just have to pause.
Yeah, and also just in terms of, for example, those moments where like you're trying to balance everything out, or you're cooking and you're cleaning and so on, and things are happening, and there's dishes to be washed, and the dishwasher's just the sink's just getting piled up and so on. And there's moments where they run to you to say, "Mummy, come play with me." Yeah. At the stages they are able to articulate and talk and so on. It's like, "Mummy, I want to read a book," or just come and show me something. Sometimes we can get busy, and I've done it myself. It's like, okay, I'll come in a minute, and that minute doesn't come and it's past.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, do you know what? Let's cherish these moments as well. Stop. The sink can wait. The dishes can wait. We'll do that in a little while. They need me right now. These moments where they run up to you and want to show you little things, like they've built a little tower out of blocks and whatever, or that book that they want to read, they're not going to come again. So actually, let's cherish those moments as well. So, they're
not so bad. Right? Like we could look at it and you could basically position twin parenting however we want, right? We could sell everybody out there. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to humanity. Why do people have two babies at once? And then we could say that, but then secretly we know how amazing it is, right? You do know. And I have so many twin parents that just have twins and always say like, you know, my sister has a singleton or my brother just, you know, had a baby. And they're like, I feel bad for that one baby. Like they don't want to say it because it's their niece and nephew, but they're like, what? That's so sad. Like they only have one. Like it's so crazy. And so for the singletons that are listening out there, I apologize, but we do talk like this behind your back. I just want you to know that, because a lot of times to like our faces, seeing everybody saying like, oh my God, how are you going to do it? Better you than me. Do they do that as much in the UK? Like honestly,
absolutely.
Here in the US, it's horrible.
Yes. Yeah, they do. Everywhere we go, and I think it's a universal thing. Whether as soon as you see twins or you see those two children together at the same time, it's like, whoa, better you than me, or good luck, or double trouble is the standard one that you say, double trouble, or I feel for you, or how do you do it? So you do get those comments, and yeah,
they make us crazy.
Yeah,
they are. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. And then, believe it or not, Jaymisha actually wrote a book, which is what we're supposed to be talking about.
I did.
But as you could see with twin parents, we could talk about anything. But we're going to come back and we're going to talk about her book, which is The Different Twins. It's perfectly okay. So sit right there. We'll be right back. All right, Jaymisha, we should talk about this book that you wrote. You freaking wrote a kid's book just for us, just for twin families. They're the different twins. It's perfectly okay with Amba and Leela. And I need to know more about this. They're so cute. This is your first book. So by the time people listen to this, as I was telling Jaymisha before, she could have 15 books by the time that you guys are listening. That's the vision. And it's My Leela Books, MYLEELA books.com. So you could find it there, but you could find it on Amazon and everywhere. Yes. But what was the point that you said, okay, I have to make a book? Like, how did you go from being an educator and then kind of putting yourself into this twin parenting swarm and then coming out of it and saying, I need to get this on paper? What was that moment like?
So there was never a point where I was like, I just want to write a book. I love writing, and ever since I was little, it would be, I'd write books, I'd draw, painting. I used to love, and I'd do that. And then as you grow older, you just get busy with these hobbies and so on, and it kind of just stops. Yeah. And then during COVID, when there was restrictions and everyone couldn't do things and so on, it was more, I felt like I've got so much time on my hands, and I felt that, okay, let's start doing the things that I love again.
Good for you.
And then I started painting again, I started writing again, and it was still then that it wasn't the book that I hadn't started writing the book. Then the twins came along, and I felt that I was just so consumed with doing things for the twins and then trying to balance out the other chores and so on. It was, when do I get time to do things for myself? I want to do things. And then I'd find the time where actually when the twins had a routine, I felt that actually during the evenings, I did manage to have an evening, I'll do something for myself.
Good for you.
And as the twins grew up, as they were going through their developmental phases, I would hear certain comments. And it was the whole comparison of the twins. And in my family, twins is the first set of twins that we've got. And as you move around in terms of going around the streets, and as people go, they comment on the twins. And it's no fault of their own. It's just human nature. You see twins, you pass some sort of comment. And then as time went on, you'd hear certain comments of, because they actually develop at different times, different stages, and they're all different. And they would say twins, okay, that one's a slow one. Or okay, so she's the lazy one. Or okay, so she doesn't like to do anything, right? Or when's she going to do that? And it was like, do you know what?
Really?
I never want, like, what if they, at that moment, I don't think they could comprehend in terms of what they're saying. But when they're older and these comments are passed on in terms of maybe something else, in terms of, you're not good at maths, or you're not good at this, or she's not a great writer, is she? Or she's just so lazy, or like she's not sporty, or like she don't like running or anything like that. In terms of, I was like, we see like what kind of impact could it have on the children? You know, we can say this, and it's not a malicious thing. I'm sure it's not. But in terms of, have we ever thought what kind of impact those comments could have? And that's when I thought, you know what? I never want my children to ever feel like, okay, they feel like one's better than the other. And actually it's perfectly okay to be where you are, what you're doing, and how you are as individuals. Yes, you're twins. You will have many similarities, but it's perfectly okay to be different. And I was like, it was more of a personal touch of, I want to make this book. How can I explain this? So I decided to write the book. And I was like, let's write this book. And you know what? When they're a little bit older, hopefully they'll understand it a little bit more from what Mummy's saying in terms of these words. And actually, if you now start reading it at a young age, having those kinds of words instilled in them, I feel is very powerful. As an educator, I know in terms of starting things from a young age, if you start building this whole, let's just say in terms of mentality, in terms of, okay, it's okay to be different. You might have similarities in someone. You don't need to be compared. Be okay with who you are. And I thought, if I write this book, and actually, then I thought, it's a personal thing, just print it for them. And I was like, no, do you know what? I'm sure many twin parents have heard these comments. Absolutely. And it'd be so great if I could pass this message on to all young twins, to say, it's okay to be different. It's perfectly okay. You will have many similarities, and let's celebrate those twin bonds that you do have. Definitely, it is special, and my twins are non-identical. So, and they don't look alike. But you've got many similarities. You will have lots of things that you can cherish, but there are many things that you're not going to do the same, and it's perfectly okay. Hence, I wrote the book.
I think it's wonderful. And I love that it's out right now, and you could get it on Kindle. It's paperback. It's on Amazon. It's affordable too, which is crazy because I can't believe the cost of some children's books, of how expensive they are. But I really love that this is something, honestly, you guys know that I get a little partial, but in all sincerity, this is a book that should be a part of the arsenal of your kids' library. Because it does, even if they are identical, and even if they aren't that different, there's always going to be something that's going to make them feel different. No matter, even if one kid likes peas and the other one doesn't. When you have twins, sometimes the differences it's like there's a spotlight on them. Because especially if they're so used to being like the twins, right? As air quotes, they see themselves as a package. It's up to us as the parents to let them know that, sure, yeah, they are a package, and how lucky are we to have this package, but there's so much more to each of them, and how much stronger they could be if they each use their own strengths.
Absolutely.
So it's, I think that for a lot of people that have boy-girl twins, it's an easier discussion to have. But when you have twins that are the same sex, sometimes it's more difficult because it's so much easier to compare them.
Absolutely.
So it's so frustrating. I think as every twin parent, could really tell you, it's a challenge to make your family see them as different. And then sometimes, like you said, that mentality, I think that's such like a perfect word of like the discussion of, please don't call them the twins. And,
Absolutely.
Please just realize that, sure, she's good in art and she's good in sports, but that doesn't make her bad in art or bad in sports. It's just, that's a strength that they have. It's not.
Or she's just not interested in it, and that's perfectly okay.
It's wonderful. It's great. And if you could help your kids realize that at a very young age, they will use that to their advantage as they get older.
Absolutely.
So they will help.
Yeah.
They will get that. They'll help those twins with, like I'm saying, like now I think that one is better in English, one's better in math. They would always like tutor each other and things like that down the line. But if you didn't start that conversation, you might not get to that point.
Yeah, I also think it boosts their self-esteem in terms of, if it's not vocalized, they might just internally think, oh, she's the good one at something, and I'm not great at that. But actually, if you're already saying it's perfectly okay the way you are, then you won't feel so bad. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so it's just the norm. Yep, she's good at that. Oh, I'm good at this, and it's okay, And also, I do feel that actually it builds that sibling relationship. It strengthens it, rather than actually you're being punished for, not punished, but you're, in terms of things that are being said to you, in terms of comparison, or sometimes even in siblings, whether you're a twin or not, we compare. And in terms of comparing, yes, it just happens, but let's just change the way we say things so that actually there's no sibling animosity in terms of how they feel amongst each other. It's like, yeah, but dad always just says that about you, or you're the one that's like this, or so it was more of a feel good about yourself and be okay with it, and build that twin relationship, in fact strengthen it.
And that inadvertently, if you teach your kids that, it will trickle into their lives. So they will then take it to their friendships, and they will take it to their partners, and they will take it to their own children. If you think it's a fundamental teaching, right? That you could say, it's okay to be you. It's wonderful to be you. You're amazing. You're enough. You're great. And it doesn't matter, twin, no twin, whatever. It's just, you're perfectly different, and it's great. And I think that It's Perfectly Okay is such a great title for this book, because it really is. But honestly, now meeting you for whatever, the 47 minutes that we've met each other, you give that off. You give off that vibe. Like, you're a very accepting, open, this is who I am, whether it's your family, whether it's whoever. You have such a strong personality that I think it's easy for you to set the example of that it's okay. And it's great for you to set that example with your family, saying like, don't do this. And if you are the type of person that isn't as, vocal, this book could be the way that you subtly tell your in-laws that they shouldn't be doing that. Right. Yeah. So like, if your in-laws are doing this, or your own parents or friends or teachers, this may be something that you want to buy as a gift subliminally, to be like, hey, check this book out. It's perfectly okay for the different twins. So like, Jaymisha, I don't think you even realize that, but I would totally use that in a very passive aggressive way, because that's my personality, that I would give this to a family member to read with the twinnies, right?
Yeah.
And be like, let's put this in there. It's so fantastic. I'm so thankful to you for what you've done for our community, to create something that becomes, such an important discussion for a milestone, right? That it's perfectly okay. And so like, honestly, like on behalf of Twiniversity, I just want to say thank you for paying attention to us.
And just in terms of the book, I really do think, I initially did it for, like I said, my twins. I really do think it's a powerful tool. As now, this is speaking from a teacher, like in terms of, I would use this book in terms of, when you need an example of something, or a reference, and it's like, how do you, I buy books, in terms of, for good listening, or example, picture books and so on for children, and in terms of having a book like this, it just really helps open up a discussion. And yeah, I really do think it's perfectly okay.
I do. I hope that schools buy it. I don't know who your publisher is, but I hope that they're making a deal.
I'm actually self-published.
Oh, we got to we got to get you into every school out there, because this is such a great book, because just like I said, it would be great for your in-laws and for my family members to inadvertently say, this is how I want the kids to be treated. I think that a lot of people, especially when you have twins in a classroom, like little kids, that if they hear twins, they only know what they know from television.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they think of like the twins that they have in cartoons or storybooks, and that they're the same person. And it's kind of like the Tweedledee Tweedledum, right? Like from Alice in Wonderland. Like, no, not quite. So this would be a great tool to add to a school library. I really do think so.
And I know that for a fact, that I've worked in many schools. There's hardly any twin books out there.
Yeah. It really,
in terms
really
of
true.
inclusion, there's hardly any books out there. And if we think about it, in terms of what about those children? And our whole thing right now is in terms of inclusive education and making children feel included. Then let's include our twins.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Listen, Jaymisha, you are preaching to the choir here, girl. That is what we've been trying to do, is kind of normalize twinning and twin parenting and making sure, like you said at the start of our conversation, like it's nice to know that you're not alone. And this book is that. It's making your twins like, oh, look, that's us. We are very different. So I love that. Jaymisha, I look very, very much forward to the next books that you write. I look forward to also seeing how your own twins' development then affect your stories as an author, which is going to be exciting.
Yes, I can't wait to write my next book, and let's just see. Just need some inspiration, and let's see what happens.
I love it. I just want like a little starfish or something named Natalie in there. Okay. Do we have like a twin friend, like a friend of the twins? Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Oh, I love that. Jaymisha, thank you so much for playing with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for having me.
You got it. It's my pleasure. And guys, don't forget that you can, like I said, you go to mylilabooks.com, but we're going to put everything in the show notes below. So don't worry. You don't have to grab your phone. You don't have to write it down. We will have it there for you guys. And we'll put the link to Amazon too, so you could grab it today. But really, like I said, it's definitely an affordable book, and you may seriously want to consider getting more than one copy, one for your home library and one for school, because this is an issue that you will have when it comes to dealing with sometimes teachers, unfortunately, but with other students. So I think this would be a really great tool for your classroom. And if you have any questions for myself or Jaymisha, you could just email us at community@twiniversity.com. We will happily answer anything that you ever need. Or you could just drop us a line on social media. We're just at Twiniversity on any single social platform. And I really do hope that you guys are getting a lot out of the podcast that we have and the guests that we have. And I'm still unbelievably honored that people like Jaymisha agreed to come on and talk to us, and we learned some valuable lessons. But if you do find that this podcast was beneficial to you, I humbly ask that you like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff, because with these stupid algorithms, the twin world just gets pushed down to the bottom, just like we do in the rest of the universe. And I want to make sure that the parents who need us know that we're there for them, not only in this podcast, but in any single way possible, just like you guys know that I'm there for you. So until next time, guys, I will see you later, alligator. Thanks for listening.